Next, we get into the running shoe. Our insight is that life is like an endurance race. It's about perseverance, pacing, and focus. And our idea is that we're all runners already. We get into competitor work and we look at these images, and I've pulled these images from all the sort of biggest competitors in the running space. And a quick Google will tell us who those major players are. When you're dealing with something like consumer goods, very easy to find out who the major players are, who really is, controlling the game, who is garnering most of the market share. And so I've pulled images from Adidas, from Nike, from Reebok, from Haka, all of these images, we put them up here and we look at them and we appraise them, okay? So the first thing we notice is that a lot of these images are of women. I don't know why that is. We don't know what to do with that yet, but we're just gonna note that. The other thing we note is that for most of these images, except for the one on the top left, they're all very bright, very sunny, very, optimistic, but also very flatly lit, except for the one on the bottom right, which is the only one that actually has shadows that are very prominent and a lot of contrast. Brightly lit imagery that feels very flat. We like the brightness because brightness usually means hopeful. It makes people happy, it makes people sort of excited, but we don't really like the flatness of it. It is so bright and flatly lit, everything just looks kind of blasé. There's no drama to the image. We've noted that from our competitors, we move on. And then, so here we just started to look for imagery about running, whether that be long distance running, whether that be track running, that felt more editorial, that felt a little bit more heightened, that felt a little bit more beautiful. A very quick Google search, we can look up magazines that deal with sports that are more editorial. We look up some of the best photographers who do sports work or photographers who have taken pictures of marathons. And again, Google is your friend. You can find this information very quickly, looking for the best of a thing, looking for editorial sports coverage or sports journals or photography journals. And with a quick search, you can come across the images that you're trying to look for. And here we're just looking for beautiful pictures of people engaged in running. And so we have that top left one where it's a bunch of people doing track running. We see the muscles. It looks very dynamic, looks very fast. We love that. We have the one in the middle on the top. It's a sole runner on a track. It looks like he's warming up. But we really love how he's so small in the frame and you see all these people watching him. You really get the drama of that competition. We have this image on the right where it's a bunch of people, seems like either before a race or after a race. I think it's after because some of them have medals. You really get the sense of exhaustion. You also get a sense of community that, so many of these people are on teams and they're all together. It looks like that some of them are talking to each other. That feels really nice. That feels very welcoming. On the bottom left, we have a shot of a runner in the midst of a marathon. He is really straining. He's really pushing himself forward. This feels very motivational. And then the last image we have is from a series that someone did on marathon runners before they ran the race and right after. You have this beautiful shot of this guy and he's very happy and smiling before the race. And then afterwards he's crying. He's just expends so much energy. I'm sure he's trained so hard for this and he's overcome with the moment of having done the thing. And that's just really powerful and reminds us that something as simple as running can be so profound and so emotional. We're going to take all of that in and we're going to, note it and we're going to say, okay, cool. We love the emotion. We love the beauty. This is what we can do with running. We can make it very powerful visually, even in these still images. Next, we go into some just general thoughts from different media that has to do with just speed. In the middle here, we have a GIF from the anime movie Akira. It's about motorcycles, has nothing to do with running, but they had a really cool way of portraying speed with these light trails on the backs of the motorcycles. Will we be able to use that? I don't know, but it was one of the first things that came to mind when I was like, speed, what's speed? We have a shot from Rocky where he's running with all the people behind him and they're reporting him and Rocky is running as fast as he can and he looks like a superhero. He's just going, going, going. We love that. Contrast that with Creed where they recreated the same scene. He's got people on motorcycles behind him. But one of the things I noticed is that while Rocky looks almost super heroic, Michael B. Jordan in Creed, he looks like he's struggling a little bit more. He looks more like a human. Granted, he's very muscly and in great shape, and we all wish we looked like him. But in this image, he's struggling. He feels more like you or I running down the street who are not runners, just like trying to make it to the finish line. We love that. On the right, we have an animated GIF from an X-Men movie where they had a character who runs so fast that everything seems like he's in slow motion. You see all of this stuff moving past him and his face is buckling from the wind. Also thought about an old Nike commercial called Find Your Greatness, which featured a kid just running on a road, one single shot. He's not running particularly fast. He's not running particularly well. He is the everyman. He's anyone who's just decided to run, and he counts a victory if he just puts one foot in front of the other and goes. These are all just thoughts on speed and running and just moving. Okay, we'll figure out how to use all of these things later and put these things together, but we've got a great bank of visual research to take us. So here we come across a slide with just some executional techniques that are outside of anything to do with running. If we're all runners already, if life is like a marathon, what if we literally depicted life as a marathon? What if we brought the tropes of running into the real world? You know, as you were walking to your business meetings, almost like in the image on the right, but if there were people giving you water, like when you run a marathon, you know, there's always the people on the side and they're handing you the water. Or what if you're walking to a business meeting, but you're wearing a marathoner's bib or something like that? But really, this idea of messing with the mundane, the normal life that we all live, that we all find unremarkable to a sense, and injecting it in a sort of surreal way with the tropes of running. And so if we look at this imagery, when I think of mixing the mundane with the surreal in a very sort of low-key way, I think of the works of the screenwriter and director Charlie Kaufman. He's done Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. He did a movie called Synecdoche, New York, Adaptation, among other things. But he's really well known for these two shots you see up top from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which bring a level of surrealness to express emotion. So on the right, we have a couple that was in the midst of a breakup. That's what this whole movie is about. But he puts them on a beach in the middle of winter as they're having this conversation where they're breaking up. And it really sort of brings out the emotional feeling of, you know, coming away from someone, being alone, desolation, sadness. All of those things are represented in this idea of waking up in bed in the middle of a snow-covered beach. Also on the left, during one of their breakups in the movie, we have this house where the elements of outside of sand is inside of the house and the wind is blowing inside the house. Again, that's very surreal, but it's him trying to express the emotion of, you know, someone saying goodbye and leaving you. We take that as a technique. We can start playing with the mundane. We can play with the real in the way that Charlie Kaufman is doing in these two top images. And then we have a couple of images here on the bottom, which are also just playing with the surreal and things that feel like slightly off. And again, we add that on top of all the other things we have, and we're getting closer to something that can be totally new, totally interesting, and a way to represent running and the idea that we're all runners already in a totally new way. The last thing we have is some photography. And this photography is from a photographer named Maria Svarbova. And what we really like about her stuff is that it's bright, it's very hopeful. But when we talked about the stuff we saw from the competitors before, was that their stuff was bright and it was very flat. There's no drama to it. It doesn't really draw you in, but you look at Maria's photos and they're all very bright. They're all very hopeful. They're very warm and enticing. And you want to live in this world that she represents, and they have a lot of drama to them. So if we can represent runners in the way that Maria represents swimmers here, we're going to be doing something really interesting and new and something that will be different than the entire category is doing already. In summation, we've got this visual style, we've got the surreal bit, we've got all of these different elements that we've pulled together one by one, and we're starting to have something that'll be beautiful and interesting and new. Let's look at some work I did for Mishka that will be another example of how we can use visual research to shape an idea to really create an execution that will be very novel, very interesting, and really take it to the next level. So the brief for this work was that we had a large collection of clothes that were very disparate and ranged in a lot of styles. We had some stuff that had a lot of animal prints, different sort of camouflage. We had some stuff that was very evocative of Americana, sort of varsity jackets and baseball caps, things that looked like they were for different sort of, sports teams. So having that sort of collection, none of it kind of really goes together. There's not one very clear, immediate idea present in it. So taking that, we had to find a way to present this as if it actually came from, there was one idea behind it. So looking at this collection, again, lots of camouflages, animal prints, bright colors, and then Americana stuff, sports motifs, things like that. The thing that struck me, the insight that I sort of came up with, was that the collection looked like Coming to America, the movie from the 1980s, which is about an African prince who comes to America to find his queen. And in it, there's a part where he is trying to blend in and he just sort of adopts all of the most American things he can. He finds sports jackets and pins and just drapes himself in Americana. But in the first part of the movie, he's in Africa, which is obviously draped in a lot of the visual signifiers of Africa, lots of animal prints, and then there was also a bit of camouflage in there as well. So the insight was, hey, this whole thing looks like it was made referencing Coming to America. So taking that insight, the idea was to present this as if it was made for the modern day Prince Akeem, who is the main character in Coming to America. So had that idea. Then the visual research was how we could bring it to life. So I did a lot of research on Americana and finding photographs of football teams, sports players from throughout the ages, from the 50s to now. Anything that really signified, it felt very American and sporting and just Midwestern and wholesome and such. Then went and found as much visual research as I could for things, for fashion that was derived from Africa as inspiration. From high fashion, low fashion, from things that are actually in Africa, all of it, put it all on a mood board. Then to sort of add another layer of maturation to the whole thing, I said, let me sprinkle a little bit of sort of digital manipulation to the whole thing, just to make it feel like it was current. This was done in 2013. And a lot of people were playing around with a digital manipulation technique called data moshing, which sort of takes information out of video to make it sort of glitchy and weird and mess up a little bit. That felt like something that was very now. We had the little bit of the Coming to America-ness of it from the Americana mixed with these sort of very African things. And we put those all on a mood board. And that sort of really started to drive a visual aesthetic, a language, and that really brought together this idea that it was, the collection was made for the Prince Akeem of now. So now let's take a look at it and see how it all came together and brought the idea to life. As we can see, visual research can be really helpful in finding a beautiful way to bring your idea to life. Where we've looked far and wide, pulled things from all sorts of different places. And now in our next lesson, we want to get to developing an execution. We're going to make something that's going to be very novel, very unique to us, that draws from the different things that we research, but comes out with something completely new.